Climate change may be the defining problem of our generation, but the answers from governments, corporations, and technologists are vastly different. You'll find everything covered in my curated notes, now available for purchase in the link below. Since the early 1990s, global climate negotiations have tried to draw the roadmap. The UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, signed in 1992, established a framework for international cooperation on climate change, calling for stable greenhouse gas emissions. Think of this treaty as laying the groundwork for future agreements, but it was not legally binding on its own. Emissions continued to rise, and the convention lacked the concrete mechanisms to stop them. Fast forward to 1997, when the Kyoto Protocol was adopted. Developed nations like Canada and Australia signed on, but failed to follow through on their commitments. The US didn't even join. And while the protocol required high-income countries to cut emissions, emerging giants like China were exempt from binding targets. The result was that emissions shifted, but did not stop. By 2015, the Paris Agreement marked a turning point when nearly every country signed. The goal was bold: limit warming to 2 degrees Celsius, ideally 1.5. Net zero targets were introduced. But again, there were no legally binding national quotas, nor penalties, just pledges. So here's the tension. These agreements matter because they build consensus and global momentum, but they don't guarantee change. Not unless policies follow and countries work together and coordinate efforts to stem their emissions. And that's where national governments come in. Across the globe, governments are deploying tools they control, land, laws, incentives, to reduce climate risk. Reforestation schemes offer subsidies for planting trees. In some countries, cities have become testing grounds too. From LED streetlights in London to tighter insulation standards in Oslo, energy efficiency is being hardwired into infrastructure. At COP26, the UK pledged to phase out coal by 2024 and cut emissions by 68% by 2030. But pledges are the easy part. Implementing them requires more than laws. It requires buy-in, public support, and political will. And this is where it gets complicated. No one really rushes to change their water tap until it breaks. No one replaces all their bulbs with LEDs unless they're told it'll save money. Governments have to walk the fine line between leading and persuading. While governments debate, corporations often just act, because reputation matters, and over the years, climate risk has become a financial risk. Apple is a textbook example. Since 2018, it's powered all global operations, stores, offices, data centers, with 100% renewable energy. But they didn't stop there. They've leaned on suppliers, asking them to green their operations too. And they're aiming for carbon neutrality, which, in real terms, means cleaning up energy sources, cutting waste, and designing more circular production systems. It's strategic. It's calculated. And it works because it's profitable. But here's the nuance. While TNCs move fast, they tend to focus narrowly, improving their own operations, rather than addressing systemic problems. And when costs rise, they can even drop their commitments. Anyway, technology often steps in to fill the gap, or at least tries to. Some solutions are familiar by now: solar panels, wind turbines, hydroelectric dams, electric vehicles. All of these reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and in some regions, they're already outcompeting coal and gas on price alone. And then there are the more experimental tools, like geoengineering, which can be a bit controversial. Cloud seeding, for instance, involves releasing substances like silver iodide into the atmosphere to induce rainfall. In theory, it could help maintain agricultural productivity in a warming world. But the long-term effects are still unclear. Then there's albedo modification, which increase how much sunlight the Earth reflects rather than absorbs. Think of cities coating rooftops with reflective paint to reduce heat absorption. These so-called cool roofs are already lowering temperatures in parts of the US, cutting down the need for air conditioning. So, we're not talking about science fiction anymore. These solutions are real and, in many cases, already implemented. But they raise important questions. Who decides which technologies get scaled? Who funds them? And what are the unintended consequences when you intervene in planetary systems at scale? Technology, in other words, offers possibilities. But it doesn't replace the need for systems-level change. It works best when paired with policy, regulation, and incentives that steer us away from emissions in the first place. And that brings us to the economic tools, the market mechanisms designed to make emissions more expensive and carbon-saving behavior more attractive. Two key tools keep popping up in climate policy: carbon trading and carbon offsetting. For a closer look, check out the full notes linked in the description box.